Hey everyone, Kevin here. Meet Kevin here. We've got to talk about this new infrastructure plan that just essentially had a verbal deal struck. So let's go through some of the details. I've got screenshots of what's in the plan here. We're going to go through all of it. Let's make it quick and snappy. So here's the scoop. 10-member bipartisan group worked with Joe Biden, came to a deal to spend a new $579 billion over the next 5 years. Combined with recycled COVID spending, we'll be spending a total of over $1 trillion over the next 8 years via this new deal. Now, very, very important. This deal is not signed yet. This is a compromise. This is just a verbal deal. This is like a handshake deal. This is kind of like you got a real estate deal and somebody's like, hey, yeah, okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I'll do it at that price. All right, sounds good. Yeah, send me the offer. Like a lot of people could still change their minds and there are a lot of people still to come on board with this entire thing here. Now, Joe Biden himself calls it a compromise. Republicans in the bipartisan group like Rob Portman, they called us a compromise. Joe Biden, in his press conference on this, mentioned very clearly he believes that this spending is ideal. It's what's needed, but it's a step in the right direction. We're agreeing on what we can agree on now, and we'll come back in the future for more. I tweeted this particular quote. I thought this was interesting. On inflation, he said, look, inflation is going to pop up a bit and then go back down. No one's talking about this big, great. And then he kind of wandered off. I think he was going to say like great hyperinflation, but I don't know if he just forgot what he was talking about or if he didn't want to say it, but he kind of rambled off on that one. But basically he mentions, hey, look, we've got this deal. Inflation's going to pop up a bit, but it's going to go back down. No big deal. Probably a quote worth watching. It's kind of funny. But anyway, obviously this kind of plan, it has a lot of work ahead of it. I'm going to go into the details in just a moment, but we still got to go through Congress on this, okay? Just because you got 10 people and the president coming together going, yeah, we're good. You still have McConnell weighing this. Nancy Pelosi has priorities. Mitch McConnell has priorities. Mitch McConnell hasn't said he's on board with this. You've got further left progressives who are like, I don't know, this doesn't seem like it goes far enough. We do have no tax changes on this one. That is no changes to the 2017 tax bill. This bill mostly, or plan, because this is a plan. It's not a bill yet. Remember, you go from plan to bill to voting on a bill to signing a bill to law, right? We're at plan. Like we start a plan. That's all we got right now. Now, this is supposed to solely focus on core infrastructure priorities, not human infrastructure. That means no stimulus yet. No stimulus included in this. Any talk about stimulus checks or extensions of the child tax credit or additional childcare money or school money, whatever. All that being talked about in the human infrastructure package, which is not part of the plan that was discussed today. Today's plan was specifically on core infrastructure priorities, which actually means things like roads and bridges and electric vehicles, which we'll talk about that in just a moment. Now, a bunch of money from COVID stimulus funding is being repurposed as well. In total of new money, we've got about $312 billion going to transportation, $266 towards other infrastructure priorities. I'm going to pull up the image of exactly where the money's coming from and what is included in this bill so we can get a little bit of an idea here as far as what we're expecting is actually coming down the pike. Again, this is just a plan right now. It is not a signed, sealed, and delivered bill yet. All right, let's go ahead and pop on over to this. So here's what we have. Bipartisan infrastructure framework will usher our nation's infrastructure into the 21st century. Well, that's optimistic, but okay. Let's see what else we have. So here we go. $109 billion for roads, bridges, major projects like public works projects, infrastructure projects. Safety, $11 billion. I always wonder, like when they have a headline like safety, $11 billion, it's like, is that like to write a textbook to go, hey, everyone, read this pamphlet or book or whatever, yeah, be safe. I don't like, hopefully it's actual safety spending. I just hate broad headlines like this. Like I want the actual details, but there's no bill yet. Right now, it's just a broad plan, and this is it. $11 billion for safety. It's the small stuff that makes these bills expensive. People just look at the big lines. You gotta look at the small stuff too. Public transportation, or transit rather, $49 billion. We've got rails, folks, money-losing rail lines getting $66 billion. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that rails are not important to some degree, but they lose lots of money. They're really good at losing money. Electric vehicle infrastructure, a specific highlight on charging stations, $7.5 billion. This is a far cry from what EV was expected to get. Like this is nothing compared to what EV was possibly going to get in the previous infrastructure package. possibly explains why we're seeing a little bit of a softening in some EV stocks right now here as we get to the latter half of the trading day, or continue through the latter half of the trading day. Electric buses, transportation, $7.5 billion. Reconnecting communities, $1 billion. Airports, $25 billion. Ports, waterways, $16 billion. Infrastructure financing, $20 billion. Other infrastructure, including water, $55 billion. Broadband, $65 billion. Environmental remediation, $21 billion. Power infrastructure. Folks, I can't tell you how important power infrastructure is. Why do you think we had blackouts in Texas? Why do we have blackouts in California? It's because the power grids are freaking old. For example, many of you know that I'm running for governor in the state of California. Gavin Newsom's got to go, wastes a lot of our money. But consider this. We've got 1970s quality infrastructure in California, just as an example. 1970s. But California won't let you upgrade it unless it's 100% green. So that means the old natural gas infrastructure that ends up causing fires because the power lines are old, but it has anything to do with fossil fuels. Oh, nope, can't upgrade that. It's crazy. Regulations are bad. So hopefully some of this $73 billion goes to fix some of these issues in California. Resilience spending. I actually have another breakdown for what goes into resilience spending. That's $47 billion. Yeah, here's a little bit more of a detailed breakdown. Oh, yeah, okay. Actually, I did write this down. That's what I thought I had. Sorry, that's Weeble. There we go. A little bit of a better detailed breakdown here. For safety, it's actually pipeline modernization and trucking and traffic safety. So a little bit more detail on this. We've got, here we go, for resiliency. This is what resiliency is. A cyber resilience, wildfire management. Finally, Gavin Newsom's getting flack from NPR about having misled Californians about how much money is actually being spent on wildfire management or prevention. More lies in California, but what do you expect in California? Flood mitigation, coastal resiliency. So these give us a little bit more detail. Some of these notes that I took here on some of the spending that we see outlined over here. In terms of financing some of these priorities, let's hop on over to this page here. So reducing the IRS tax gap. Sorry, this is a little blurry, I know. But reducing the IRS tax gap, I believe this means increasing audits. Tax gap would be kind of like, hey, we should be getting this much money, but we're only collecting this much. Like, hey, let's bump this here. In fact, I want to say I have a better shot of this here somewhere. Let me get an idea of this. I believe they're thinking about raising roughly $100 billion potentially from more audits for basically taxes that are owed. I'm going to see if I can quickly find that page. But in the meantime, getting money back from the unemployment programs, which states are giving up. There are a lot of states that are saying, hey, look, our unemployment rate is going up. We should stop spending or stop paying the unemployment boost. Let's just not use that money. And that unused money is essentially what is going to, here we go. I found it. There we go. I got it. Okay, give me 1 second. That unused money would be going back to help fund part of this bill as well. All right, here we go. Let's go see what this is. Here's another shot of this. So here we go. This is, here it is. Yeah. Net $100 billion. Reduce the IRS tax gap. Some of these were a little harder to see. Somebody got a good shot of this in Congress. Or a reporter got this. Recoup the unemployment supplemental, repurposing broadband funding, allowing states to sell and purchase toll road credits. Okay, just so you understand toll road credits. This is actually really, really smart. So very simply put, states and local governments are required to match certain transportation funding with the federal government. But if you implement toll roads, that's less of a cost that states and federal governments have to burden or bear. And the federal government will actually give you credits the more toll roads you build. Another reason why one of the parts of my 20-part plan for governor in California is to build toll roads. Optional toll roads, because it helps save you money and actually makes you money while alleviating the traffic congestion. As long as they're optional, like you don't want it to be a regressive tax. You want toll roads where it's an option. Like my picture is, imagine you have the 405 freeways congested, you got tunnels going underneath it. Optional toll roads. Spectrum auction, they're also raising money. Let me go back to this shot because here's another shot of what we got going on here. Unused relief fund money, broadband infrastructure, we talked about this, the toll road credits, talked about this, customs user fees, fine. They're going to do auctions to auction off more 5G spectrum bands, which allow the expansion of 5G. Some sales from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Hey, oil prices are high. OPEC's talking about increasing production, so May as well dump some oil onto the market. I do expect oil prices to come down into the future here. In fact, I wonder how WTI crude's doing today. Lately, it's just been tearing up. It's been going straight up WTI. It's actually up 0.25% today, $73.29 a barrel. I expect that to have a pretty fat correction to the downside, especially when OPEC starts releasing more of their barrels. But here's just that example. So you can see kind of the chart of oil prices here. But this is more on infrastructure on the plan. So what do we not have here, and what are the next steps? Well, right now, no corporate tax hikes. Notice no rebates in this for people, like no stimulus checks, no additional stimulus money, none of that. No tax hikes, no tax changes. The $100 billion that electric vehicles were supposed to get is gone. It's like, here's $7.5 billion for buses and $7.5 billion for chargers. That's $15 billion. That's a far cry from the $100 billion that was initially suggested for electric vehicles. There was also a lot of debate and fighting about, hey, maybe Republicans are like, hey, well, why don't we have a tax on electric vehicles? Because electric vehicles, they're not paying gas taxes. So we should increase gas taxes and at the same time have an electric vehicle tax. None of that ended up in this plan. They just decided, fine, let's just spend less money to incentivize EVs just a little less. But EVs in general, buses, charging stations, and so on and so forth, still getting about $15 billion. $200 billion in housing spending, gone. Not part of this plan, which the housing portion also included getting rid of the 1031 tax deferred exchange, which would have been a complete disaster for housing. So this actually means this is, in my opinion, a win for housing. $400 billion for elder care, gone, not in this package. Obviously, these are things that are to be, maybe to be coming in the future. They also plan to get $100 billion in financing by working with the private sector to invest in private-public partnerships. Something very, very smart, something at a top priority in my campaign out in California. You gotta work with the private sector. You can't have an us versus them. The government should work with businesses and should work with nonprofits and activists and work with the people. Like, you gotta have a circle. Everybody's gotta win. You make win-win deals. Anyway, this is more on the national deal here. Important to know what the next steps are for this plan. So what's next? Number one, you got to get bipartisan support. You don't have all the progressives on board. You don't have Mitch McConnell on board. We don't know if Nancy Pelosi is going to be okay signing this bill without having a plan for the other bill going. Because remember, this is deemed to be the hard infrastructure plan. You still have soft infrastructure. That's where you see stimulus, childcare funding, educational support, blah, 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 housing support. Those things are still going to have to get negotiated, not necessarily as part of this deal, but Joe Biden suggested that he might not sign this bill until there's a clear path forward on the next bill. Now, what a clear path forward means is up in the air. Who knows if that means like, yeah, it sounds like we're going to be able to work something out or we actually have a plan done. But there are two big bills that we're expecting to get done: hard infrastructure, soft infrastructure. Right now on hard infrastructure, we have a bipartisan deal put together by 10 members of Congress and Joe Biden. Again, this does not include Mitch McConnell. I'm not quite sure if Nancy Pelosi is 100% on board with everything, although she seems to be much more on board with this bipartisan package than Mitch McConnell does so far. Again, progressives not on board yet. We'll see. That means right now, just to give you an idea in terms of time frame expectations as to when this plan, this deal that got struck, might actually see the light of day. Here's just a quick outline for you as to what that might look like. We'll jump over to the iPad. So right now you have a plan. You have a plan to spend roughly $1 trillion over the next 8 years. It is a 5-year plan that is pegged around just almost $1 trillion. So slightly under $1 trillion in 5 years, but over 8 years, it'll cost more. So you go from this plan, which is on hard infrastructure. You go from this plan to actually drafting a bill to voting on that bill. And then, of course, you can pass a bill and sign it. But before we can even vote on this bill, before a vote will be held, we're going to have to talk about, this is bill number 1, which we'll call, you know what, we'll do bill sub H, we'll call it, which will be like bill hard infrastructure. We're also going to have to come up with a plan for the soft infrastructure package and then get a bill for the soft infrastructure package, right? So all we've really accomplished right now is this plan right here in yellow. This is all we've gotten so far. But in order to actually get to a vote on the hard infrastructure plan, we're also going to have to come to an agreement on the plan for the soft infrastructure plan. So the green here is to be done. Got to have a bill drafted, got to get a plan put together for the other one, got to get the bill drafted for this one. All we literally got right now is talk, pretty much, and a handshake deal. Now, it's something, it's progress, it's good, it's not bad. It's nice that that you don't see some of the crazy tax changes that could really skew real estate and corporations and businesses and personal incomes and so on. Certainly regarding capital gains in the stock market. So a lot of these things just not even part of this, right? There's no talk about tax changes here other than more audits. That is in this. Now, as far as timing, when do we actually expect all of this to be done? Probably not until the fall. The expectation has generally been that these bills might get passed between August and September. We're in June right now. That means we've got the rest of July to really negotiate that second part plan and then see if we can actually get to voting and passing these bills. So right now, no pass bill, but we've got a solid deal on a plan. Seems pretty strong. Mitt Romney's on board. Biden's on board. Lots of folks on both sides of the aisle on board. Still holdouts, though, from left progressives, McConnell, certainly others on the right side as well. So we'll see where it goes. Overall, I'd say it could be a lot larger of a package, which might create some more inflation risks. I would say $500 billion and more spending, pretty moderate. It seems overall the stock market is taking this in stride. Stock market reacting very positively to the deal right now. We've got also Bitcoin operating very well. Bitcoin loves it when stimulus packages or stimulus-like packages get passed. So it's been positive for cryptocurrencies. If we look at the 10-year treasury, which is sometimes seen as an initial or part of the gauge for inflation fears, which you could also look up the 10-year break-even curve. I personally like to just use the 10-year curve. We could see the 10-year yield still rotating down, continuing on this trend line to the downside. So there you have a complete update on exactly what's going on with this infrastructure package. Hopefully you enjoy all of these details. We'll be back for market close probably a little bit later today, maybe like 12:15. Anyway, thank you so very much for being here. Check out the amazing programs linked down below. Get that 40% off coupon code on those courses on building your wealth, including the Stocks and Psychology of Money group, where I send you buy sell alerts anytime I buy or sell anything, whether it's crypto, stocks, options, you name it. Thank you so very much for being here, folks. We'll see you in the next one.